This is the Jake for the State podcast, and this is the call for every red-blooded, God-fearing, liberty-loving patriot to prepare yourself, take your position, stand your ground, and advance the cause of freedom. Let's go.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Jake for the State podcast, and it is campaign season, so we're doing some interviews with candidates, and today with me I have candidate for House District 96 here in Oklahoma, Steve Herberger. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So, just what everybody wants to know, obviously, is, first of all, who are you?
Okay.
And why are you running? And will you do what you say you'll do? I think that's what all the voters want, right?
Right.
So let's just start with, who's Steve Herberger?
Well, I'm 56. I'm married getting ready to have my 25th wedding anniversary in July. Wow. And I have two daughters, 28, 22, and two grandchildren, 6 and 3. I'm self-employed. I've been self-employed for 25 years too.
Whole time you've been married, huh?
Yeah, whole time been married. Believe it or not, we made it because we both work together. And you want to talk about a struggle for a marriage, you're together 24/7. But fortunately, I found the right partner, so we got along at work and at home the same time.
Does she work with you in the business, or?
She doesn't work that much anymore, but she did. I mean, she was the main force behind it because she's great with people, great at sales, just did an outstanding job. And so she's been a part of it for, I'd say, 23 or 4 years.
Wow.
And then just this last year, kind of started doing a little bit less.
Wow. Now, what kind of business do you have?
I have a moving company, storage, roll-off dumpsters and junk haul. So,
wow.
Service business.
It is full time. Have you seen that? Have you seen that meme? No, it's not a meme, but a little clip of the little boy. He's got a Nerf gun, and it said, "What it's like owning your own business," and he aims at his crotch and fires it.
yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, I feel the pain. I have my own business as well, so I understand. And I would say that politics is probably similar to that. You know?
It is, yeah.
I was talking to Mark McCluskey the other day, and famous for his stand up in Missouri, and now he has a Mark McCluskey on Fire podcast. And he said he was thinking about running for Senate, and he said one of his friends said, "Okay, get you a nail, get you a hammer. Anytime you think about running for office, put it in your hand and just ram it through." He said that'll be better than running for office.
Right.
And so, I can see that in some ways. It requires a lot, but I think if you're doing it for the right reason, the reward is worth it.
Right.
And I guess that leads to the next question: is what's driving you? What makes you want to run for office?
Well, God, country, family. The country means everything to me. And I want a place that my children and grandchildren can live in and grow up in like I did. That it's a special place. You have a love for your country. You get to enjoy the freedoms of this nation. But that's being stripped away every day. You see our federal government, the president, the judiciary is stripping our rights. Right now there's two sets of rules. There's rules for Democrats and there's rules for Republicans.
Yeah.
And the rules for Democrats are basically do whatever you want and you'll be okay. Republicans sneeze and there's a chance you're going to jail. I mean, you see that with the President of the United States.
Right.
And I've been involved in different things in politics, and I've always cared deeply about it and interested in it from a national perspective. I don't know if you are familiar with Mark Elias.
I am.
He's an attorney, and that's how all the voting laws got changed during COVID. Was him and his group went around and started filing all these cases. Well, you've got to make these lessen up these restrictions in order to make sure people get a chance to vote. And so what happened? There weren't signature requirements. There weren't any sort of requirements. And which Georgia, by the way, one of the states that was infamous for what got changed that cost the election, was able to get stolen. He went back through and filed a case to stop the legislature from saying that if you are an immigrant, that you have to be able to prove that you're an immigrant, that you have your papers and you're now a naturalized citizen and that you have the right to vote and whatever else. And so he went in and said, well, you can't, that's unjust, because the data might not be updated. And so there's possibly hundreds of thousands of people who won't get a chance to vote. Well, those are all the illegals coming over that their plan is to allow them to vote, right?
Exactly.
But Georgia, he lost that case, fortunately. But, I called a lot of the Republican Party, the heads in each of these states that had lawsuits filed against them. And, some of them I spoke to, and they're kind of like, is this some wacko? Well, who are you? Right? And I would tell them, I said, listen, it's Mark Elias. It's called the Democracy Docket. I'm trying to remember if that's exactly what it's called, but I said he brags. He tells everybody what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And so I went through and I called one of the gentlemen I got a hold of in Idaho, the head of the Republican Party. He goes, at first I left him a message and he called me back and he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, well, go to this website, pull it up. I said, type in Idaho and you'll see the lawsuit. He types it in. He goes, oh. He goes, he's going after our Secretary of State. He goes, I'm typing my Attorney General right now because I'm going to let him know that this has been filed against the Attorney General. And so we went on and had this conversation. He's doing it while we're having a conversation. And he goes, man, how did you find this out? I said, I'm just telling you. He likes to brag. I said, if we're going to fix a problem, we have to know where the source is coming from, who these people are. And so anyway, long story short, my wife was with a group of ladies, and they were looking for someone to run for office, and my wife volunteered me that I might be interested. And so I started getting contacted saying, are you really interested? And I said, well, let's talk about it. And after having a few meetings with several of the people and going to a few different events, I made the decision that I would go ahead and run for this because, let's face it, either you get involved or you just, you don't have a right to complain, really.
Right, exactly. And you're running against an incumbent.
Correct.
And, there's different perspectives on that. You've heard from people who said, hey, you shouldn't run against an incumbent. It's bad for the party. I personally don't buy that. I've always said I love to see a lot of people running for the same reason you just said. Get involved. At least you see some eagerness, some action, instead of just the rampant apathy that we see. And so what kind of feedback have you gotten from those that are saying, hey, you shouldn't run against an incumbent?
Well, basically what I was told was they don't like anybody running against an incumbent. They don't want them spending any money. It's a Republican going against a Republican. Let's save our ammo for the Democrat Party. And I understand, but not all Republicans are great.
Yeah.
And just like you can go through and you can look at some Democrats and you can go, I'm surprised at how conservative they are, right? You can look at Republicans and go, I'm surprised how moderate and liberal they are. Right? So, at the end of the day, I'm going to run this campaign. If I win, great. If I don't, maybe my opponent will take the issues that his constituents have concerns with and do a better job in their mind, because that's the problem, is they don't feel like they're being represented, and that's the whole point of it. I hear people, of course I have issues that I'm worried about, I'm concerned about, and that get my attention. But the fact is, I'm an employee if I take the job. I'm there to do their work. The constituents in that district, I'm there to be their voice, and that's it. And I don't know what all the issues are that they're facing. And it's great when you get to talk to people and you find out different issues on this subject, and you're going, man, that's not in my wheelhouse. You know how you live your life, and your life revolves in a certain way. You have with your kids, your grandkids, places you go, the things you see, the things you're involved with. And then there's a whole other family that's 2 blocks away that has a completely different experience going on in life.
Right.
That you don't know anything about. whether they're trying to raise money because their children are handicapped and they're struggling on being able to feed them and take care of them, and the cost of, getting a handicap van. Those things are not something I've ever dealt with. So when you learn those things, you're like, wow. That's eye-opening.
It is. What have you been hearing? We're here with candidate Stephen Herberger, by the way, running for House District 96. What are some of the issues you've heard from your district that people are concerned about, that maybe they're not being heard on or not seeing the action being taken like they would like to see? I mean, have you had a chance to have those kind of conversations yet in your district, and what are you hearing?
Well, it's been very early.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's only been about 10 days, and so
since
I've had
you filed,
meetings.
right?
And so a lot of what seems to be the recurring comments is the representative's not listening to him. They invite him to different events, and he doesn't go. Now, I'm not there, so I don't know if that was the case or not. But this is what they're telling me, and they're not being listened to.
Well, there's a reason they asked you to run.
That's right.
You're right. If they were satisfied, they probably wouldn't have asked anybody to run.
And it's like anything. If you've got one person who's kind of outspoken about it, and that person could just be upset for a reason, and they have an axe to grind. But when you get multiple people and it starts kind of becoming quite a few people, then you go, okay, there's clearly an issue that's having, and so that's
So we mentioned some of these federal issues, and obviously, I mean, that's, you turn on the news, that's what's spotlighted. On my show, I pride myself in being able to focus locally, on Oklahoma, and obviously you're running for a state House district.
Correct.
And at a state level and at a local level, what are the issues that are highlighted for you? Where's your primary area of concern, and where would you want to put your emphasis if elected?
Well, voting, immigration, education, making sure that there's not pornography in school, that boys and men are not playing in girls' and women's sports, protection of children in and out of the womb. It's got to be a priority. And, looking at the bill that's been brought up in the House, I think, on illegal immigration coming to the state of Oklahoma, it was a misdemeanor, I'm trying to go off memory, a misdemeanor and a $500 fine, and then possibly 72 hours and you've got to leave the state.
Yeah.
If you got caught twice, it could be a felony and a $1,000 fine and 72 hours. I think that was
I think that's right. Yep.
Deal. Now,
House Bill 4156.
Okay, that has no teeth in it. I mean, they're already here illegally, right? They're not going to care unless you make them leave and you drive them to the border and you drive them to whatever state. They're not going to care. They're also not going to pay you any money. You're not going to get it from them. So the reality is as a state, we have to have a standard, whether it's the employers, and we say, listen, if you knowingly hire an illegal immigrant, it's going to be a $50,000 fine and a possibility of losing your license, and you won't operate in the state anymore. And if you're a charity, the same thing for you. You won't operate in the store if you're aiding and abetting an illegal immigrant. We need to make this so that they don't want to come to the state because they're not going to get anything out of it. They're not going to get a job. They're not going to get any money. They're not going to get any food. So that way they're going to say, you know what? I don't want to go to Oklahoma. I'll go to New York and California and Seattle, where everybody's lost their mind. And they're giving away, they get to stay in these fancy hotels and get $10,000, and they're getting what they deserve out of it. Their states are in ruin, and their cities are in ruin because of what they've done. And the people there, the illegals, have the audacity to complain about, the housekeeping and the food that they're getting.
It's unbelievable.
It's ridiculous, but that's one of the issues I would look at as a state. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point. Teeth are constantly an issue.
Yes.
I was a part of voting against CRT in the state. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that bill that we got passed was there was no teeth, no consequences if he violated the law. Mm-hmm. We set the law, but there were no consequences built in for the school districts or the teachers or administrators. Mm-hmm. And if you have no teeth, then you have a weak law with no effect. And I agree. I think you bring up a great point concerning the immigration bill. If you go after the business owners who are hiring these people, all of a sudden they'll find no place to rest. The immigrants themselves cannot find employment. So I think it's a legitimate concern and a great idea.
And you also have, I don't know if you saw the Democrats' response in the Hispanic and Asian caucus. They're, of course, like everything, no matter what a Republican does or however minor this is, they need to stop that, get to the people's business. The federal government will take care of that. Well, the federal government is helping this invasion. They're not stopping anything. They're not going to set any standards or rules. And then the concern for the caucus was, well, there's been people that have been here for 20 years that are never become citizens. What's going to happen to them? They work at jobs and they do this and they do that. I mean, we have to think about what strain we're under as a country, and that has to be the focus.
Yeah.
And is it going to be perfect for everybody? It's not. But we have to do whatever's necessary to protect our state. And that's first and foremost is the state legislature. The national problem until that administration is replaced is just going to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that point, Senator Brooks, he said there are 33,000 undocumented immigrants in the state of Oklahoma that paid $26 million in income tax. So one of my first questions, he said, to the speaker is, how are we going to make up that $26 million if there's a mass exodus? And it's interesting that it's always about money. Mm-hmm. And I believe there's a lot of good legislation that never has a hearing because of potential revenue loss in the state. Mm-hmm. I personally had a bill that would help correct some issues with your car tag. And, for instance, if you purchased a car that was damaged on a car lot, a brand new car, but it had hail damage, mm-hmm. It was $27,000 car, you bought it for $12,000 because mm-hmm. of massive hail damage. Well, currently you have to pay the tag as if it was $27,000 car. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to correct that. Well, the concern was, well, the state will lose revenue.
Right.
Well, never mind how it's going to benefit the people.
Right.
And so I get sick of that argument about, hey, we're going to lose money if we deal with this problem of illegal immigration. That's not a valid argument in my book. So, you're right. I think that so much energy and attention is given to national issues, but until we have somebody different in the White House, it doesn't really matter much. And even beyond that, until we have a majority in the Senate and the House, it's not going to matter much. But we can have a bigger impact here in the state. We just need the right people in place.
Right. So, and how do they know that it's $33 million?
Or $26 million.
Or $26 million.
33,000 undocumented immigrants. Exactly.
How do they know?
Evidently, they're keeping track. So,
I mean, if they're undocumented, where are you getting this number from?
Right. That's a good point.
And that's the biggest issue is the Democrat Party controls the narrative. They control the language. So whatever they say just becomes a fact. And the Republican Party has no fight in it at all. I explained this to my youngest daughter. I've used several ways of trying to explain. I said, right now, the United States is like a 777. We're up in the air traveling at 800 miles an hour, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are flying this thing. And they're going straight into the side of a mountain, and you have the front half, which is the Democrats, cheering him on. And in the back of the plane, you have Republicans asking, do you think he has the owner's manual? You think he's gone through the proper training? They're not fighting. They're just looking at all the little details and never getting into the fight and trying to stop anything. And we always end up on the wrong side. Yeah. We always end up where they get what they want, and we spend our time defending ourselves for something that was never true to begin with. That's the entire battle. Yeah. And we don't have anybody who says, you know what, this is not how this is going to go. We're going to talk some truth and some facts. And just like the campaign of 2020, it was a fraud. It was a stolen election, and suddenly you're not allowed to say that, but you were allowed to say it for any time a Republican won prior to that, and you could say it the entire time they're president of the United States. But you can't say it now because it was true. And so they have to protect, themselves. Yeah. And now they figured out they can get away with it. So 2024 is our last chance, I think.
I believe the priority is really on the states. We've got to get a different administration in D.C., but the priority is in the states. That's why I think that races like this are so important. And we're here with candidate Steve Herberger for House District 96. I'm just looking at your website, Steve, and you have listed 8 priority issues. You mentioned protecting children in and out of the womb. What do you think about Donald Trump's recent statement regarding abortion, he said that, hey, I think we should leave it up to the states and the people in light of the Dobbs decision.
Right. Well, I think that the Roe v. Wade, having it ended was the correct thing to do, because it is a state's issue. I mean, the federal government shouldn't be involved in a lot of those types of issues, because, again, you can see they don't do very many things very well. And I think as a state, we get to control our own destiny is a better place to be. I think it makes more sense that if we had that control, because it's, listen, you go to New Jersey or New York or Virginia, and they want to have an abortion at birth, and I don't know how the federal government. It would be great if the legislature and the Senate would pass a bill nationally that banned abortion. Mm-hmm. But realistically, at the place we're at today, it is a state's responsibility, and I think we have to do what's best for our state and set these parameters of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And because the federal government, ideally, wouldn't that be perfect if you had men and women who cared about doing the right thing?
They say politics is downstream from culture.
Right.
And when we need to establish that cultural those boundaries, that moral compass again in our state. Yeah. Which brings me to my next question. I was going to ask you about number 5 here on your list: allow prayer back in schools and
Correct.
Post the 10 Commandments in every classroom. Obviously, we're seeing this being debated in the House and the Senate right now about, will we allow the 10 Commandments being posted in our classrooms? Will we allow prayer? I know State Superintendent Ryan Walters has pushed for a minute, a literal minute of, or maybe 2 minutes of silence.
Right.
And, tell me more about your thoughts on that, about prayer in school and getting the 10 Commandments posted.
Well, I think what our schools lack is discipline and morality. Our children they spend so much time on social media, and they're not guided in the right direction. They don't understand that their faith in God should be a priority for them. And if a lot of them are being exposed to it, then allow that to be exposed in school. I mean, how long was prayer in school for?
Yeah, until 1963.
Right, until it was taken out. And
right.
I know that in Enid, Oklahoma, I think we had prayer in school up until I was in junior high, until it finally stopped. So it lasted longer here, because I'm not quite that old. But, I would be for allowing that as an elective class in school, religious, learning about the Bible. Uh-huh. Yeah, and allowing children to have that around them. Let them have the feeling of having a moral standard in their school that helps guide them while they're in school. Because I think that's where we miss a lot of that, or the children miss that, and don't get it maybe at home.
Right now, we're also looking at this bill that would allow chaplains in schools. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, again, it's the same thing. I think it's important that there's someone there that will allow children, because you may think about the children and the crises they face. There are real crises to them at that time. We were all kids. We were all teenagers. We all went through stuff that we thought, oh man, it's the end of the world, right? And to have somebody that you have the ability to actually go talk to, and they can teach them how, where to focus this energy, who you need to ask help from. Jesus Christ is your Savior. You need to learn how to communicate. Let me just give you some things, some words of wisdom. Let me give you some passages out of the Bible, something you can take with you and learn. The harm that this would cause would be that the Democrats' lies would be exposed. And
such as
matter of fact, I mean, so would some Republicans' lies. About the only thing the most important thing to you is the government. We take care of everything. We're your God. This is how it comes across to people. We're going to take care of you. This is what they're trying to push on them. And whatever you think is bad, whatever you think you want to do is okay by us. As long as it's, deprived. Now, if you want to have religious service in school, well, no, you can't do that. But if you want to have a transgender teacher stand up there and pretend to be a woman, then we're fine with that. And you want to talk about, you want to show them pornographic books, well, we're okay with that too, right? That's where we're at.
Yeah. Do you believe there is a separation of church and state? What does that look like?
No, I mean, there's nothing in the Constitution that says the separation of church and state. I believe it came from Thomas Jefferson in a writing, if I remember correctly, that basically he stated that there should be a separation from the government dictating what religion people get to choose. There wasn't a, you've got to be separated. The schools can't have religion can't have religion in there. You can't have religious. That never happened. But like everything, we just slowly give away our freedoms. We slowly start taking morality out of our schools. And where are we at today because of it? What's society look like today?
Yeah.
Does it look like it did in 1950? No.
Yeah, and if we've made improvements, maybe if we don't look the same as 1950, but we're better, then we say, okay, that's not a problem. But the first image that pops in my head is the girl who slammed the other girl's head into the concrete while everybody filmed her. I mean, we have a real morally depraved youth, and that's searching. I was at the recent event with Ryan Walters at OSU, Oklahoma State University, and had a chance to talk for 45 minutes with a young man afterward who was part of the liberal crowd there, but he was willing to engage in dialogue. And I asked him, what do you believe? Well, he had no clue. And he was open and honest about it. I don't know. I'm looking into Taoism. I'm looking into Buddhism and exploring these different religions. And so I asked him, I said, so what do we base our law on? Our law has to be based on something. There's a reason we don't have Sharia law here, because our law is not based on the Quran.
Right.
It's based on the Bible. So we have such a lost youth who's searching, and they're really loud, really obnoxious
Very
sometimes,
Yeah.
But we have to, I think, not allow that, but also look at the reason for that, and also help meet them as early as possible. That. I'll get on a soapbox preaching and won't give you time to talk about your platform, but I'm with you on that. I believe we need that back in our schools, and we need to establish that moral base again. I think chaplains is a great idea. I think prayer in school is very much needed. I wanted to ask you, just kind of getting back to your campaign, the political side of things. You said that we asked you earlier before we started recording about a consultant.
Right.
Who's your consultant?
I don't have one.
Man after my own heart. I mean, I didn't have a consultant either. I hate to lambast all consultants.
Right.
But before I go there, I want to ask you why. Why don't you have a consultant?
Well, what I think is that if I can talk to the leaders of the precinct and listen to what they have to say and work with them and understand what the needs are, and then get a coalition of people, if they agree with me, then they should be willing to walk and knock doors for me, right? And I think it's much better to have someone that believes in the candidate going to a door to tell someone about the candidate than just hiring 20 people. Here's your 1,000 houses you need to hit today.
Yeah.
I need a record of all those places and how many people answered the door, right? And so, will it be a winning strategy? I don't know. I mean, I think my opponent has a pretty substantial backing, apparently, is what I've been told. And that's fine, too. It really does have to do with, I'm there to try to win this campaign, but I want to do it with people supporting me and backing me. Because I know, knocking doors, people really want to have conversations a lot of time. Not everybody. Some people are like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll vote for you, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the people who want to know how you're going to change the world. And that's a 45-minute conversation.
Right.
And you're trying You go, man, I've got to move on.
I know.
It's tough.
That was my biggest problem at the doors. I'd spend way too long at each door because I loved those conversations.
I do too.
I know. Well, so a consultant, dictating what's on your mailer, where to go, who to talk to, things like that. I think it's kind of a cop-out sometimes for candidates to hand the reins over to someone else to lead to take care of things and to ensure they get elected. And it's not always about just getting elected. Sometimes it's about the conversation and the debate. Would you be open to debates and forum settings in this election with the incumbent that you're running against?
Sure. Now, I do want to say this. I don't know if he's going to be around. I don't know if you read the news about his family.
No, I didn't.
So I got sent this to me not too long ago because I didn't realize this was the case, obviously, but he had posted, I think, on his campaign site. His son got an autoimmune disorder.
Okay.
Some sort of hepatitis. I'm not sure. I don't want to say this wrong, but he apparently had to have a liver transplant.
Okay.
And he's 11 years old.
11.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I believe he said he was in Houston. So I think he made the statement that he personally may not be doing a lot of campaigning. And I would also like to say this, since I brought this up, is that I think it would be great if everybody prayed for his family.
100%.
And prayed for the little boy, because that's a horrible situation.
Yes.
I mean, I know the last thing anybody wants to ever deal with is something to happen with one of your children.
Yep.
That's a tragedy. So, that's difficult for him and for his wife and obviously for the little boy. And I think he may have one or two other children. I'm not sure, but that's a struggle for them. So I don't know if that would be an opportunity for him.
Right.
So.
No, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
That's understandable. And we will pray for him. And I don't think we've mentioned his name, but Representative Stinson. And,
Correct.
And for the purpose of prayer, then, yeah, we need to be praying for the Stinson family.
Correct.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing that up. So we'll wrap it up here so that keep it around 30 minutes so that people won't be inundated with everything. But if you could highlight your top three, what is your top three issues if you were to be elected? I know for me, kind of my top priority was DHS reform. We adopted out of DHS, so I was going in there with that in mind. And so what's front of mind for you going into office if you were to be elected?
Well, it is. It's education and, again, keeping boys and men's out of women's facilities, out of any sort of sports, illegal immigration. Second Amendment rights are a priority because you see every day the federal government trying to grasp, take a little bit more away, doing a little bit more. And, we're in the state of Oklahoma. We're like the last solid place in America. And we've got to maintain it. The walls are going to start caving in on us, so we better be ready to damn well fight to make sure that we get to stay a free state and not have to, continuously lose rights like a lot of states are giving up. And so that's got to be a focus. And, you mentioned DHS. That's also very important to me. I was a CASA advocate, and I know what that's like. And, the amount of kids that are in the system, it's a terrible experience. And you go through that process, and you're so thankful when you get a child adopted and into a family. It's the best experience, and that 2 or 3 year grind feels like
it was all worth it.
It was all worth it, right? When you're going through it, you go, man, I don't know. This just seems like we're just spinning wheels. We can't get anywhere. But, the children have to be the most important things for our state and for our country. They're going to take care of what we have left, and we have to pay attention and make sure we're going down the right path.
Yes. Well, how can people get a hold of you or visit your website if they want to find out more?
Well, my website is Herberger, district96.com, and that's Herberger. Or you can go to Steve Herberger, District 96 at Gmail. That is an email address. My cell phone, 405-474-5546. And you feel free to give me a call if you have questions or if you want to reach out to me. On the website, there's places that you can post or ask questions if you want to help out or if you want to know my thoughts on different stances. I'll happily respond to you if I'm educated in it. I'm not going to lie and say I know everything about everything, because I don't. So there's no reason for me to pretend. But it doesn't mean I can't find out information about the issue and get educated on it. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Steve, I appreciate your time here today and letting the people know who you are, what you're running for, why you're running, all very important. And so, again, that website, herbergerdistrict96.com, and that's Herberger, district96.com. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to the Jake for the State podcast. And be sure to like and subscribe. Tune in every day for some updates on what's happening in the state. We'll talk to you later.